Hello, today we're going to be talking about jargon and slang. So we have talked about these topics before, both last year and this year, but we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail and just to kind of refresh your memory as well. All right, so to start off with, without looking at your notes, so without reminding yourself of anything, that we've taken notes on before, I want you to write a definition and an example for jargon and then a definition and an example for slang, please. Once you're done, come back to the video. Okay, I want you to compare what you've written with these definitions. So jargon is a language variety that's particular to any trade, occupation, hobby or group. It's highly specific to its context. It may not be understood by those outside the field. It relies on knowledge and expertise of all participants in a field to be effective. It acts as a marker of in-group solidarity and group membership, and it can also be used to exclude those who don't belong to the group. Slang, on the other hand, is a feature of language. It's informal, which is used to strengthen social relationships and communicate easily and effectively between members of social groups. Okay, so slang is a feature of language, whereas jargon is a language variety, so be aware of those two differences. Slang may not be understood by those outside the group, just like jargon. It also acts as a marker of in-group solidarity and group membership, and it can also be used to exclude those who don't belong to the group. Okay, I'd like you to pause here and go and do the 2020 slang task, the worksheet that's on the Google Classroom. Once you've finished with that, come back to the video. All right, jargon and registers. So jargon and registers are varieties that we use on the job, unlike variations that are regionally and socially determined. People with different professions distinguish themselves by their specialty languages. Linguistic features common among people who have common work or recreational interests can reinforce and display in-group identity. So where it says professions, that could be your job, but it also might be like an amateur kind of interpretation of the word of the word professions. So that does include hobby groups as well. Jargons vary continuously in response to a complex set of different situational factors. If one factor is changed, the language may change accordingly. So these are some of the factors that can influence the use of jargon. The first is the relationship between the speakers and writers, or the hearer and reader, and any other participants within earshot. B, where the communication takes place, so the physical setting. C, whether a spoken or written medium of transmission is used. And D, what is being communicated, meaning the subject matter, the topic that they're speaking or writing about. Jargon, or registers, have a number of functions. The most important of which are A, to satisfy the communication needs of the group, so basically for effective communication, and B, to mark group boundaries and promote in-group solidarity, so to strengthen the social ties and strengthen the group as a whole. Okay, let's read through all of these different definitions of jargon. So the first one, jargon is the language particular to a trade, profession or other group, the language used in a body of spoken or written texts dealing with a circumscribed domain in which speakers share a common specialised vocabulary, habits of usage and forms of expression. The second one, jargon is unintelligible talk, gabble or gibberish. So this is from Samuel Johnson's dictionary in 1755. The third is the language peculiar to a trade, profession or other group, medical jargon, or speech abounding in uncommon or unfamiliar words, or in a derogatory sense, any talk or writing which one does not understand, or 4, unintelligible or meaningless talk or writing, meaning gibberish, or 5, debased, outlandish or barbarous language. So these are all taken from the Macquarie Dictionary. So we've got 5 different definitions for jargon listed in the Macquarie Dictionary, which we know is kind of the authority on standard Australian English. And then this is taken from a piece of research by Hudson, and this is saying that jargon is a kind of Masonic glue, meaning mortar, between different members of the same profession. So that one really addresses not so much the language itself, but the function of the language and the reason why it's being used. Okay, I want you to go back to that section of the video, pause them there, and I want you to write out answers to these questions. So what are the differences between these definitions? Are there any issues with any of them? And which do you think is the most accurate? Once you've done that, come back to the video. All right, so here is some criteria of jargon. The first is lexical. So this is where we see examples like abbreviations and acronyms, such as in real estate advertisements. So things like WIR for walk-in robe, that kind of thing. Syntactic, such as imperatives in recipes, agentless passives, and impersonal constructions in academic discourse, full noun phrases rather than pronouns in legal documents. So, for example, if you're reading a recipe, you're going to say, or you're going to read something like bake at 200 degrees rather than you need to bake this at 200 degrees. So the imperative, the syntactic feature of imperatives is a criteria of jargon in recipes. Prosodic. So in racing, so horse racing and football commentaries, livestock auctions, we expect to hear the language in a specific way. So you can not be anywhere, like if you have a TV on in the lounge room and you're in the kitchen and you can't quite hear what's being said because you're not in the same room, but you can hear the intonation patterns and the tempo of speech, you should be able to recognise pretty clearly and pretty quickly that you are listening to a commentary of an AFL game, for example, because we recognise those patterns, the prosodic features, rather than the actual content of the language. We also have patterns that we recognise in terms of prosodics as well. And then finally, graphic representations or formatting. So that encompasses how things are laid out, so the visual aspects of coherence and cohesion. And also might be to do with spelling or whether or not things are initialized and that sort of thing. Okay, I'd like you to just read through each of these examples on your own. So this is an example of legal jargon. Just pause it, have a read, see if you can pick out, if you look at this list, see if you can find any lexical, syntactic, you won't say prosodic, or graphic representations of the jargon in this example. Once you're finished with this one, I'd like you to watch this. So this is an example of medical jargon. I want you to listen to some examples of the jargon itself, but also have a think about how the patients, which you'll see in a moment, how they react to the use of jargon. What does this do to the relationship?
Look, I'll take 10, you take 10. Get in, get out. No smiling, no hugging, no letting no cry. Just be quick about it.
You're the one that's slow.
I am not slow. You are slow.
You want to bet?
Yeah, you are.
A comprehensive work
Did not reveal any
vascular abnormalities.
Your Doppler was negative
For deep venous thrombosis, so there's no need for chronic
coagulation or an IBC
Your
filter
biopsy was, however, positive
for a mixed anaerobic
non-group-based streptococci infection.
Your BUN and creatinine elevations had us worried,
About rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis.
which could have signaled an autoimmune disease.
What does that mean?
We're not going to amputate your leg.
You get to keep your kidneys.
Congratulations. You can go home today.
Okay, so there we can see both of the doctors are using highly specific medical jargon, and the result of that basically is that the patients don't understand what they're being told. So this is about them and their bodies and what's happening to them, and they really don't understand what is being said, or they don't understand any information about their own condition until the doctors rephrase it in what we would term to be kind of more simple language. Okay, I want you just to have a listen to the contrast between the way that JD, the doctor, explains the anatomy of the heart compared to the woman and how she explains it. So what's the difference? What does this tell us about her and her role in the medical community?
I gotta go. If I'm around that sea hag for more than 10 seconds, my throat closes up. Page me if you need me.
Need you? Perry, please, I got this one.
Are you Dr. Dorian?
She was all over me.
I have a few questions about my father.
Your father has syncope and...
Per, I'm back in. You see, Nina, the heart is like a big inflatable house. Now, on the bottom floor are these two rooms, or ventricles. Now, these ventricles, or rooms...
Syncope in the setting of severe LV systolic dysfunction indicates a high risk of arrhythmia, so the best course of action would probably be an implantable defibrillator. I'm a medical malpractice attorney, and I am much smarter than you.
Okay, so there we can see that JD, the doctor, is trying to kind of do the opposite of what we just saw in the Grey's Anatomy clip. So he's trying to come to so this is the daughter of a patient, trying to explain it in really simple layman's terms. He's trying not to use jargon so that it would be more understandable for the relative of a patient to understand. But here we can see that immediately she signals to him that she is actually a member of the group that understands jargon. So even though she's not actually a medical practitioner, she says she's a medical lawyer, and that allows her to participate in the jargon of the medical profession. So in that way that she's showing that she is part of the in-group and that she understands. And she's also using it, you can hear at the end when she says, "I'm much smarter than you." She's using it to convey aspects of her personality and of her identity as well. Okay, this one's an interesting one in the sense that you'll notice there's no actual highly specific language. So even though we've got this under mechanic jargon, there's no actual specific lexis or semantic kind of terms that indicate mechanic jargon. It's more about the discourse patterns. So I'd like you to watch this one and have a think about what this says about the what we consider to be typical linguistic behaviour for mechanics.
Right. Who's for the steak? I know the menu said £3.50 for the pepper sauce, but it's actually going to cost you a £5. And the spuds have gone up since we last spoke, so the potatoes are now 16 quid. Sorry about that. But as for your sea bass, love, I put some lemon on it for you, so I'm going to add 7 quid to your bill. I don't think she'll even notice. Enjoy your meals.
We deal with the garages, so you don't have to.
Okay, in this example, we obviously have got the mechanic put into a different setting, but basically what this is saying is that the jargon or the linguistic patterns that we expect from mechanics is quite almost obfuscatory, so is trying to hide all of these hidden charges and kind of brush through them really quickly so that people don't have time to react and they just pay. Alright, so some differences between jargon and slang. So slang is informal. It's usually spoken, not written, but not always. We definitely can have written slang as well. Depends on what the text is. It involves mainly vocabulary. So here we're talking about lexical and semantic differences. It's playful. It aims to startle, amuse, and shock. It's short-lived typically, so it provides solidarity and secrecy. So this is where the kind of group membership idea comes in. It indicates that you belong to a group, and it prevents others from eavesdropping as well, people who don't belong to that group. On the other hand, jargon, so attitudes towards jargon can sometimes be negative because it's what turns a toothbrush, for example, into a home plaque removal implement. So sometimes it's called intellectual quackery, basically meaning that it's complicated for the sake of being complicated and sounding fancy, but it's not really doing anything that you can't do with normal language. So it does have sometimes some negative attitudes attached to it. Jargon is a lot more static, so slang changes a lot faster than jargon does. Jargon can be around for years and years and years and not change at all. Like in the medical field, for example. Obviously, there will be some things that change in medical jargon, but for the most part, like the anatomical jargon, probably going to stay the same because nothing's changing over time. Some jargon is replaceable, but much of it isn't. So, for example, things like plaintiff in legal jargon and morpheme in linguistic jargon, they don't change because the things themselves don't change, so we don't need to change the language. Okay, finally, I'd like you to do the office jargon task. This is also on the Google Classroom, so make sure you go and have a look for that and complete that task now.